I've wined and dined with kings and queens. I've slept in alleys and dined on pork and beans. God, you were good.
American Dream. He's just a common man.
So, this is the first time I've ever done a video like this for the channel where something happened and it was personal. So I just felt like I needed to talk about it. If you know me, you know how big a part of my life pro wrestling is and has been. I wouldn't be where I am today out in Los Angeles if it wasn't for my time working in professional wrestling. And one of the people I have to thank the most for that is Dusty Rhodes. A lot of it happened over the course of a year and a half. I joined the writing team in 2006 during the summer, and on my second day on the team, I got to meet Dusty, and Dusty said it was nice to meet me, and he gave me 2 weeks. He told me that was his bet in the pool on how long I'd last, and I didn't know how to take that at the time, but end up lasting more than 2 weeks, thankfully, and got to become friends with the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. And growing up loving wrestling, that what's better than becoming friends with Dusty? There's too many stories to tell about Dusty, but there are a few that I love and look back on. And one of those was when Cody, who's now Stardust, was coming on the road, and it was the afternoon before the show started, and Dusty started telling one of the stories, and he told us about the midget house, and it was amazing to watch Dusty tell this story about, the good old days, how there was a house of just a bunch of midget wrestlers, and everything in the house was to scale for the midgets, and I got to feel like I was reliving history with him, because that hasn't happened since and probably never will happen again. I remember Dusty yelling at me. When Dusty traveled, he had his carry-on, and that was it. And if you were in the car that was riding with Dusty, as soon as you landed, you got your stuff off that plane and you were on the road, and you were driving to the hotel or to the arena or whatever it was. And I had my checked bags, and I can't do Dusty's voice justice, but I remember him saying, "Kid, what are you doing? Why are you checking your bag? You're not that big. What are you carrying with you?" I also remember Dusty was the first one who really gave me a shot to be more than just a writer's assistant. There was a shot we were doing backstage with William Regal and Dave Taylor for SmackDown, where they crossed paths with Kendrick and London. And we started shooting it, and Dusty started asking me what I thought. I hadn't had that happen before. And we would go on to work on a bunch of stuff together. I got to do the first episode of The Dirt Sheet with Miz and Morrison because of Dusty. And that was probably one of the most creative, fun things I got to do. And in week 2, Dusty said, "You guys have this," and trusted us to keep going with that. Probably the greatest honor of my professional life, though, was working with Dusty on all of the in-ring and backstage segments leading up to Ric Flair's retirement. You know, there were a ton of people involved in it, but when it was the day of the show and the assignments were happening, it was Rick, it was Shawn, it was Dusty, and it was me. And I still can't believe I got the opportunity to work with those three and be a part of such a huge, huge moment. A kid growing up in Connecticut and getting into professional wrestling, you never think you're going to be there with a legend. There was one day, I can't tell you where, maybe the writer's room, maybe on the road, but I got to lock up with Dusty. Being from the Northeast, I just remember we were always really stiff when we locked up with each other. And collar and elbow tie up with Dusty, and I just remember him saying, "Oh, kid, loosen up!" I got to have my lockup critiqued by Dusty. And it wasn't because I was booked in a match against Dusty or on some show with Dusty. He let me lock up with him. It's pretty damn cool. It's amazing to think that it's been 6 years since I last saw him. Such a huge, huge part of my life, and never going to get to see him again. The nice thing is that Dusty, on camera and off camera, was the same to me. You know, there are lots of guys in wrestling that have an on-screen persona, and the smile and the vibe that they give off is different when the camera turns off. Being somebody that knew Dusty, I can go back and I could watch his matches and I could watch his promos, and he's still there. It's the same as being with him backstage. Dusty, I'm never going to forget what you did for me. I'm never going to forget the fun it was working on the team with you. And I'm never going to forget that wrestling wouldn't be what it was if it wasn't for you. Not even going to say people like you. You were a huge, huge part of this industry. And it was lucky to have you. Dusty, thank you.